Welcome to the second video in my three-part series covering Turtle WoW's new level 60 dungeons. In this video, I want to cover the Caverns of Time Black Morass. The name will sound familiar as it carries the same name as the dungeon from the Burning Crusade expansion, but this Black Morass is a very different instance. For example, when you first zone in, the familiar swamp from the Burning Crusade is nowhere in sight. You're presented with a very linear dungeon crawl, always moving forward from one dragon pool to the next. These first two pulls will probably be a test on whether your group will be capable of completing this dungeon. The first three dragons have over 16,000 hit points, and in the second group you're met with the whelps. These are the bane of the dungeon and should always be killed first. They will mana drain your group, and when they reach full mana they will explode for well over 5,000 arcane damage, effectively wiping your party. Even when crowd controlled, the whelps continue to gain mana, and they only need to gain 1500 before they explode. In pulls with Rift Guards, they should also either be crowd controlled or focus fire to be the first kill in their group, as their AoE shout will reduce armor by 72%, making your tanks take a lot more damage. The only kill priority above Rift Guards should be the whelps. In groups with Rift Weavers, the same situation applies. Either CC them or focus fire, as they will stun your tank and will also cast Darken Vision. This is a magic debuff reducing your chance to hit by 25%. You'll also notice that the mobs here drop Corrupted Sand. This is a reputation turn-in item to gain faction reputation with the Wardens of Time. In the Caverns of Time zone, they have a Quartermaster with various items at various reputation levels to purchase. The first boss, Kronar, isn't too deep into the instance. It is a fairly straightforward encounter. He is able to toss the tank in the air, causing some fall damage, so it's smart to tank him against the wall with a low ceiling to prevent yourself from being thrown up too high. For caster DPS, he does put up a spell reflect every once in a while, so be wary of that. At this point, Chromie will give you a temporal bronze disc, which is used to close time rifts around the instance. In total, there are 4 rifts that need to be closed. It's worth noting to be careful when moving forward along the path after Kronar is dead, as there is a group of 3 Dragon Elites, including 1 Rift Guard and 1 Rift Weaver, that are just out of sight behind the wall up ahead. It is easy to move forward too quickly and end up pulling them while unprepared. There is also a second Rift Guard patrolling the area as well, so be careful not to pull the patrol along with the rest of the group. The next pull, the Corrupted Bronze Defender, can be a difficult one. This mob casts an instant AoE debuff that does rapid damage over time. This Corruption of the Earth lasts 10 seconds and deals about 800 to 1000 shadow damage every 2 seconds. This can quickly overwhelm your group, so silence and stun the mob while trying to burn it down quickly. One of the more difficult pulls in this dungeon involves a group of 2 Rift Guards and 3 Whelps. It is really difficult to keep all 3 Whelps from getting full mana and exploding, so this is the most likely pull that will result in a wipe. DPS should do their best to burn down the whelps one by one, and if a hunter or a shadow priest is in the group, they need to be aware of the mana for all 3 whelps to ensure they aren't getting close to full. Remember that the whelps only need 1500 mana before they explode, and that isn't a lot. It can happen very quickly, resulting in a not so fun corpse run. A lot of pulls in this dungeon can be attributed to being DPS checks. Burn down the whelps before they explode. Burn down the Rift Guards so the tank can get their armor back. Burn down the Rift Weavers so they don't stun or debuff your tank. Burn down the Corrupted Defender before your group dies to their AoE damage over time. This second boss is no different. At 50%, the boss will spawn adds that need to be killed pretty much as soon as they spawn. They will cast the Drain Life, dealing instant shadow damage and healing the boss. They have a little over 2000 hit points, so solid AoE is definitely needed. The adds will only spawn once, and so they only need to be dealt with once. The boss will continue to cast Shadow Volleys and Healing Reduction Curses, and at 10% will also mind control the tank. Groups should be mindful of this MC and be ready to burn down those last 10% to finish the fight without their tank. The next half of the instance is full of Kiraji mobs looking almost straight out of the AQ raids. The warriors will debuff your shadow resistance, and the clerics will heal and also mind blast. Focus down the clerics first, then deal with the warriors. There are also drones around this area that at this time are very bugged. They will not move from their positions by any means and will always remain in the exact same spot. When party members are close to the drones will cast Poison Volley, and they will also summon Poison Clouds, much like those from Dying Ghouls and Scholomance. The clouds should be avoided, and for the time being, groups can stay outside Poison Volley range due to the drone's lack of movement. The clouds, however, have infinite range and ignore LOS, so they can be cast anywhere. At this point, in a cave to the right along your path, you will find a somewhat hidden rift that needs to be closed. Behind the rift are several whelps, but if you are careful, you should be able to close it without aggroing them. Once you've passed a group of larvae and a few more Kiraji mobs, you'll reach the top, and at this point the trash pulls have pretty much ended. You have the third boss here, Time Lord Epokronos, and he will spawn what I believe is a random ad at 50%. In one run that I've done, he has spawned an Echo of the Lich King, and in another, an Echo of Kael'thas Sunstrider. There could very well be further potential ads that I have just not yet encountered. Once the last portal is closed, you'll be faced with the penultimate boss. This is Infinite Chromie. This fight really is a DPS check, which tends to be a very common theme in this dungeon. Chromie will spawn Rift Guards. Yes, those same mobs that do a shout reducing armor by 72%. This effectively means your tank has almost no armor during this fight. These Rift Guards need to be killed ASAP, not only for the armor debuff, but also because they in turn will spawn whelps. Again, those very same whelps that will mana drain your party and then explode for 5,000 arcane damage. If the Rift Guard isn't killed before a whelp spawns, all DPS must switch to the whelp and then go back to the Rift Guard to prevent it from further spawning more. On top of this DPS check, Chromie will also cast AoE Fears, causing further issues in being able to quickly burn down the Rift Guards and whelps. And this also isn't a one-off like previous ads spawned by bosses. Chromie will continue to spawn Rift Guards throughout the encounter until the fight is over. Once Chromie is defeated, the path to the actual Black Morass, where Medivh opened the Dark Portal, should open. In my group's case, it did not. We had to petition a GM to port us inside, and only then were we able to move forward and wrap up the instance by killing the last boss, Antinormi. Compared to the rest of the instance, this fight is not very challenging. Antinormi does an AoE stun targeting melee, but otherwise doesn't seem to do anything special. Within the Black Morass portion of the instance, there is also the chance for rare bosses to spawn. In our group, we had Rotmob, a large croc. This boss will punt party members far away and will also consume the tank much like the slimes in AQ20, dealing damage over time while removing control of the character. Another potential rare boss is Mossheart, a bog beast, and while I haven't yet had the chance to encounter it, the Turtle WoW database does list some information, such as the item drops from this rare boss. A bit of flavor text through a notification appears after Infinite Chromie is killed, alerting you to whether a rare boss has spawned and which one it will be. Turtle WoW's Caverns of Time Black Morass is, in a nutshell, tedious and difficult. The theme of the dungeon can be narrowed down to DPS checks, and level 60s in dungeon gear are most likely not going to be meeting the required DPS. When a dungeon gives the impression that there is a need to be carried by raid gear DPS, something isn't quite right. The Rift Guards, for example, have over 14,000 health and need to be burned down in the Chromie fight before they summon whelps and drain your party's mana. The whelps themselves, particularly the pull where there are 3 of them, are difficult to handle and can easily result in a group wipe. Some of the mobs also don't seem to function correctly. The larvae tend to spam their life drain, resulting in a single larva, for example, being able to do over 2,000 to 3,000 shadow damage with a single burst of life drains. These are the same ads as spawned during the second boss fight, causing that encounter to be unnecessarily harder than it should be. The Akir warriors are also constantly casting their shadow resistance debuff, even when it is already applied to their target. This sometimes means for a period of time, they are not attacking, which can be great and also awful as it means warrior tanks aren't getting any rage. And as already previously mentioned, the Akir drones always stay in the same spot and never move. There are other minor bugs in the instance, such as after every wipe when you zone in, you get yet another temporal bronze disc placed in your inventory. And of course, there is the unfortunate game-breaking bug that prevents you from moving forward into the Black Morass portion of the instance after Infinite Chromie is defeated. I imagine though that this will be a priority to resolve in one of the upcoming updates. As for the rest of the instance, well, the trash pulls are numerous, and the corpse runs very lengthy due to the linear nature of the dungeon. There are no shortcuts, and the feel of such a linear dungeon is very akin to most of the dungeons and dungeon styles later introduced in the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. In some ways, it doesn't really feel like a Dungeon 4 vanilla World of Warcraft. In fact, it almost feels like a little piece of nostalgia from the Burning Crusade hidden away in classic WoW. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it further reinforces the uniqueness of all the classic World of Warcraft dungeons. It doesn't really hurt to have a dungeon or two with TBC vibe, as I think it just adds to the flavor of the world. One can also look at Turtle WoW's Black Morass as somewhat of a 5-man raid instance, as DPS checks like these aren't exactly common in other 5-man dungeons. I do believe there could have been an opportunity to turn this dungeon into another 10-man raid, much like Upper Blackrock Spire. It would have allowed for less stress on individual members of the group and possibly eliminated the need for such strenuous DPS checks throughout the instance. Much like Karazhan Crypts, as I mentioned in my previous video, this dungeon isn't run very often on the Turtle WoW server. Several of the groups I've spoken with have only done runs up until the first boss, with very few of them making it all the way to Infinite Chromie, let alone defeating her. One simple solution that I think could be addressed is long corpse runs in the dungeon, and this can be done by allowing mounts in the Caverns of Time. Even outside the instance, players are not able to mount, and the area the Caverns of Time covers, both inside and outside the instance, is quite large. Aside from the Corrupted Sand turn-ins, there are also 2 quests just outside the instance. One from Tavadrius, asking that you bring him the head of Kronar, and another from Chromie to kill the last boss, Antinormi, and as a reward you get a pair of goggles. The rewards for these quests are an indication of the unique loot that drops in this dungeon. There are several nice tanking items with shadow resistance, and as shadow resistance tends to be a common theme in Black Morass, a la the Larva Drain Life and the Cleric Mind Blasts, as well as in Karazhan Crypts, these items would be a good addition for any tank. There are again some nice off-spec items in the dungeon as well, such as Paladin Shoulders, a Bear 2-handed mace, and even a Shaman tanking helm. And there are also a few potential epics to gain as well. My group completed the dungeon in about 2 hours, and that includes all the wipes, corpse runs, and waiting for GMs. I do imagine that once the bugs are patched, the instance should be doable in about an hour to an hour and a half for most groups. This would be on par with a full Skullman's run, and be of a similar duration to Turtle WoW's other custom dungeon, Karazhan Crypts. For those interested, you can find my walkthrough and review of Turtle WoW's Karazhan Crypts on my channel, or see the link to it in the description below. My next video should wrap up my 3-part series, concluding with the last new level 60 dungeon, the Stormwind Vaults. Thank you for watching.